Welcome to Journeys Through Sociology, a series of interviews with the Executive Committee of the International Sociological Association. I'm Lalebe Bohanyan, and our guest today is Dr. Simon Mapadimeng, who's joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa. Dr. Mapadimeng is currently the research manager at the National Arts Council of South Africa. He earned his PhD in sociology at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, where he later went on to teach, as well as to serve as the director of the Program for Industrial, Organizational, and Labor Studies. Dr. Mapadimeng's extensive research has focused heavily on issues relating to labor and development. Among his recent publications is the co-edited book, Contemporary Social Issues in Africa, which draws upon case studies of Botswana, Uganda, and South Africa. And in addition to currently serving on the ISA's Executive Committee, he's also been the president of the South African Sociological Association. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Mapadimeng.
Thank you, Lale. It's a pleasure and I'm glad that to be given the opportunity to do the interview.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you. Dr. Mapadimeng, I know that your work with the National Arts Council has you engaged in many research projects, and that you've been very deeply involved with sociology in South Africa for many years. But, you know, out of all of these various endeavors, what would you say is the part of your work that you're currently most excited about?
Well, I am excited about the work that I'm doing within the arts and culture sector. Being the research manager at the National Arts Council means that most of my research is mainly focused on the arts and culture. Mm-hmm. And of course, mainly on the arts, but I must say the foundation and the interest actually for me has been laid by my previous project, which was my thesis, doctoral thesis, whereby I focus mainly on the indigenous African culture of Ubuntu. Some call it African humanism, too. Mm. And that actually, in a way, was my initial interest in the area of the arts and of culture, I mean to say. And now being at the National Arts Council has sort of given me opportunity to blend that with arts, whereby I focus on both areas of research at the moment. So that actually is the area that I'm currently excited about. But of course, I do also do some research and publish in other areas of general interest to any sociologist, while my main focus is on arts and culture.
So do you think that, in terms of doing work on arts and culture, could you just give us maybe a few specific examples of the kinds of research on arts and culture that you've been working on?
Well, the National Arts Council is a statutory funding body to the arts. It's meant to support the arts in South Africa, advance the arts, South African arts, and in a way, promote some of the national imperatives, such as, for instance, promoting social cohesion, given the historical past divisions in South Africa, mainly on racial lines. So social cohesion is one of the national priorities. And of course, that the arts should play a role not only in promoting social cohesion, but also making a meaningful impact on the lives of South Africans, such as, for instance, creating job opportunities and income earning opportunities. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, of course, even more important is also that to ensure that the arts, that for the arts to fulfill this role, we need to be able to create the arts market. We need to create the audiences for the arts, consumption of the arts and culture products. And that requires the promotion of appreciation, understanding, and awareness of the importance of the arts. Mm-hmm. This is particularly important given the history, as I said, of the division and deprivation, whereby in historically black schools, mm-hmm. like in my time when I was still at school, and I think this is still the problem, by and large, we had a situation whereby arts and culture was not part of the formal curriculum. Mm-hmm. It has been the case, of course, that has been the case for for historically white universities, the white schools. So the exposure to formal training in the arts and culture has been mainly racially biased towards white South Africans. And that has not been the case for black South Africans. But then now, the priority now is to actually bridge this historical gap through redress and, of course, at the same time promoting social cohesion. So these are some of the challenges that we're facing. And the projects that I'm doing, the research projects that we're doing, for instance, some of the research projects that I'm doing to help NAC enhance its work and maximize the impact is, for instance, we've just done a study on public participation in the arts, more of a national survey to determine the extent to which the public of South Africa is involved in the arts. What are the factors that actually prevent them from becoming involved or being involved in the arts? Are the arts for them a priority? Are bread and butter issues more important than the arts? Are the arts seen more as just or how can I say it, more as a luxury? So are the arts still the main preoccupation or the main product consumed by, the art products, are they still mainly consumed by white middle class and maybe black middle class? So these are the questions that we're engaging with. And these are indeed some of the international questions as well. Because I've noticed that within the International Sociological Association, we do have a Sociology of Arts research committee, whereby my participation in those committees was in the sessions of that committee was very interesting. I came to realize that the arts market, audiences for the arts and all this are a challenge. And of course, I've seen the equivalent of similar studies done in the US by the National Endowment of the Arts on public participation in the arts, whereby they're actually trying to look at, for instance, age factor. Are younger people more involved or older people still more involved? Is the art market aging or what? These are some of the interesting critical questions. And so I think I would say in South Africa we are also dealing with the same challenges, but more also the racial aspect also comes into the picture, because generation of interest in the arts, awareness, appreciation of the arts, the foundation is laid at the community level and in schools at the early stages of learning. And the problem with formal education, as I said, in schools, is that that's where I think we had a missing link. In communities, Black African communities have been practicing the arts. And this actually, when I came here, I just come from the meeting whereby we were looking at arts or basic education and how the arts and culture can be integrated into curriculum. Currently, as a matter of fact, I've just started a project whereby I've just deployed about close to a dozen of young researchers, across the South African schools who are going to be doing this further research to determine the extent to which this curriculum is actually has been factored into the broader school curriculum. So I think we will get the reports maybe in the next 2-3 months down the line, which will add to the body of knowledge on these issues. A previous study has been done before in 2004. Which was more of an audit study on the arts and culture curriculum in schools. So we are sort of building onto that. So this is one of some of the research projects I'm doing. And I've just actually completed another project on impact assessment of funding to the arts, both the arts projects, arts organizations, companies, and individuals as well as students. And that yielded a very interesting result. So this is more of empirical studies that I made, that one is involved in.
But it's fascinating. It's fascinating how it's clear that you're bringing a sociological perspective to trying to understand this issue and kind of engaging with issues of arts and national cohesion, issues of class, issues of race as a way of addressing these.
Yes.
Yeah.
I must say, Lale, in the arts the arts sector now in South Africa, the research which has been done is very limited, and then the participation of sociologists in such research has been minimal. Actually, I'm probably the second sociologist to be involved in this sector, in research capacity. So I'm really, really excited. I'm even more excited because one of the challenges is to develop capacity, especially amongst young researchers, and in particular black young researchers. And my focus, I must tell you, is on bringing up young training and giving opportunities to younger researchers, graduates who have just completed their undergraduate or postgraduate qualifications and now are looking for research opportunities. So I'm sort of creating those opportunities for them through these projects. And what happened is like we try, in my selection, I'm very conscious of the demographics so that we are able to strike a balance and be able to have a representative group of researchers. And of course, maybe hopefully massify numbers in the long run of researchers in the arts, some of them with sociological background or sociological training.
Well, and this actually leads me to the next question I wanted to pose. You know, so as you talk about, you know, striving to kind of nurture another generation of young sociologists, in terms of your own kind of trajectory as a sociologist, you know, I know that your relationship with sociology has not only been quite varied and extensive, it's involved teaching, it's involved research, it's involved organizational work, but also quite long-standing, you know, going back to your own undergraduate study in sociology. So, you know, as you strive to kind of nurture this new generation, when you look back on your own trajectory, can you perhaps maybe identify for us, you know, a few reasons why you were drawn to sociology?
Well, I think I also became a sociologist by accident. It was purely accidental. The reason being the historical context in South Africa, as I mentioned. The historical context is such that in South Africa, we had a schooling whereby Bantu education, whereby we were not exposed as learners to diverse career choices. So as a result, you find that an average black learner in South African schools under Bantu education aspire to follow conventional professions, which is, for instance, medicine, becoming a nurse, for instance, becoming a teacher, so becoming a social worker. So those were just conventional areas. And of course, I also aspired for the same. For instance, I wanted to become a medical doctor when I went to university. When I realized that I'm about to get to university, I wished to pursue medical profession or degree, especially orthopedics. After the influence of my father, as we discussed, telling me stories of how orthopedic surgeons have made a huge difference in his life and in the lives of other people. So I was particularly interested in that area. But of course, I mean, the deprivation under apartheid Bantu education was such that one was not thoroughly exposed to the maths education, maths and science education, which is a requirement for one to pursue medical studies. And as a result, now I was left with other areas that actually I considered, which is law and teaching. Which is teaching at school as a school teacher. Then what happened is like those were options that were open for me. But then I realized that also at school I loved history. And the love for history for me was not only, I think, inspired by the apartheid environment, because it was very clear that so I was not only interested in history, also political studies as well, political science, if you can put it that way. I remember my father used to share stories about events, key historical figures like Bismarck, and for instance Napoleon, and other top African liberators like, for instance, Jomo Kenyatta. So this of Kenya, and of course the movements such as liberation movements such as African National Congress, SWAPO in Namibia, then it was called Southwest Africa. So I mean, these were inspirational stories, and they made me more interested. And he kept on actually buying history books for me, And then I really enjoyed history a lot at school. And I then, of course, as I said, the apartheid environment also had an influence. I enrolled then for Bachelor of Arts, whereby I intended to major in history and political science, but I also enrolled for sociology, which I did not know anything about. I had no clue what it was. But I mean, it turned out to be such a fulfilling and really exciting, one of my most loved subjects at varsity undergraduate. And of course, also what made it more interesting to me is that the teaching staff at varsity in sociology, the sociologists who have been teaching us actually inspired us even more. And for me in particular, I got the inspiration from the fact that they were also articulating the liberatory discourse in their teaching in the lecture theatres. So that also sort of drew me much more closer to sociology. And of course, the soul of the discipline itself, one could feel it. And it was much more popular. And of course, industrial sociology as well. So this is very interesting if you take into account the history of sociology and how it evolved in South Africa. By the time I went to university, which is, I think, started 1990, already the discourse was very strong, the liberatorist discourse was very strong. It was in a period when we were moving, the winds of change were beginning to blow in South Africa in terms of imminent changes towards democracy, but of course apartheid grip was still there. A lot of turbulence happening then during that period, which could be referred to as referred by some other scholars as interregnum, the period of interregnum. I think it was Nadine Gordimer who referred to it as one of the prominent literary scholars in South Africa, who actually referred to that period as interregnum. So I remember some of our professors, for instance, I remember specifically Professor Jacqueline Cobb teaching this course on the first level of sociology. And then she cited this young man who actually was involved with the African National Congress, and of course who actually apparently set out the bomb and actually as part of the resistance to apartheid, which killed some white people, unfortunately. But his name is Andrew Zondo, one of the great figures that we still recall to this day, who played a key role in the liberation. So that story, and how the late professor, another sociologist, Professor Fatima Meir, actually played a key role in the court proceedings when this guy was being charged based on his political involvements and the bombings, which was politically motivated, and how Professor Fatima Meir actually gave mitigating circumstances, mitigating evidence from a sociological point of view, as a sociologist, trying to make sense of how Andrew Zondo actually set out that bomb, how Andrew Zondo actually got involved, and raising all kinds of sociological questions. And that for me was very inspirational. And of course also the passion of other professors who have been teaching us, such as Professor Eddie Webster, one of the also eminent South African sociologists. Professor Eddie Webster, his enthusiasm about labor studies and industrial sociology also just just sparked this interest in us in my generation then. So, and now the whole lot of concepts about how capitalism and apartheid were integrated, how they work together, and in some cases, of course, how they actually were dysfunctional to each other. But very interesting stuff, and that was for me very inspirational. And as a result, I realized that I was doing very well in sociology, and I majored in sociology and history. My favorite subjects were history from my young age. And of course, at the same time, one was playing safe, doing English as well as one of my language studies, so that if I get unemployed after completing my undergraduate degree, and if I don't perform well, I can't go, and I'm not able to pursue postgraduate studies, then I will be able to maybe fall back into teaching and do maybe a postgraduate diploma or a postgraduate degree in teaching. So it was the calculative decisions, but at the same time, I discovered that I love sociology. And I was doing very well in sociology, and then I went on to enroll for honors and masters afterwards.
So it's, I mean,
that's how I became a sociologist.
What's interesting to me in how you tell this, though, is that, you know, there are some aspects of the way you tell this story that would be applicable to many sociologists, an interest in history, an interest in political issues, but that in your case, part of what drew you to sociology was the specificity of sociology in South Africa and how it was so intricately connected to anti-apartheid struggles and to kind of liberation struggles.
I must say, Lale, that's the reason, I think that's one of the reasons why sociology became a popular subject at varsity. And of course also political science. So because they were speaking to our own experience. You could relate to what actually you were, and of course also, I think I came to realize that I think I'm meant for this. I meant to become a sociologist because I just loved it. I grabbed well with the concepts and the theories. So I realized that having a strong theoretical understanding also actually and also conceptual understanding of sociology and the issues around you in the society. I think that also I realized that actually makes you a better sociologist. And from there, of course, after undergraduate and postgraduate teaching, it's up to you now to take the baton and run with it and actually accept yourself as an independent scholar.
So in that sense, when you took the baton and ran with it, what were some of the challenges that you faced in doing that? Because this is one of the issues that we're particularly interested in this series of interviews, is to try and explore the different kinds of challenges facing sociologists in different parts of the world. So in your case, you know, clearly it's quite clear that sociology held a lot of promise for you, and that you saw it as a kind of powerful means through which to explore issues you were interested in. But what about the kind of other side of that story? How have you struggled as a sociologist?
Well, I mean, given the historical problem, the historical condition, whereby, you might, I've got a huge respect for my former professors, that I've mentioned. But at the same time, if you look at it, the makeup are mainly white professors. And then as a result, unfortunately, we were not exposed to indigenous, especially African indigenous knowledge systems, discourses, a theoretical perspective emanating from Africa. And that I came to realize when I became a professional sociologist. And then, of course, especially with my involvement with the South African Sociological Association, and now also, of course, also African Sociological Association, which had a stint in South Africa, but we still have to find a way of sustaining it, which has a link with Codesria, which is based in Senegal. So, that came, a whole lot of debates and information and research work and the papers which were presented in the conferences. And I came to realize that, okay, then we were given more of a grounding in Western-inspired theories, typical sociological theories such as actually so-called the founding fathers of sociology, Karl Marx, Weber, Durkheim, but I came to realize that, oh my God, there are even more other powerful scholars emerging from Africa. And I think with the whole movement of African Renaissance, the renewal of Africa, has actually brought out what actually one hasn't experienced at varsity in my training. And that actually is now the challenge. Actually, you may actually be aware that one of the issues that is being dealt with, engaged with, is that of addressing the Western hegemonic discourses, theoretical frameworks that emerge from the Western context, and that we still are grappling with coming up with indigenous, maybe a theoretical concept that emerge from our own context. And I think being a sociologist at this point in time, I'm also one of those who are challenged in my practice of sociology. I need to also apply my mind to actually see how one can actually push the frontiers of knowledge and actually emerge with some attempts towards a new theoretical breakthroughs, which are more African sociological theoretical breakthroughs, but of course deriving inspiration from some of the existing works already.
It's interesting, as I listen to you right now, it very much echoes what Dr. Vanita Sinha was talking about in an interview we did recently, where she also identified for her one of the challenges. She said that in her own training, having this kind of theoretical framework and training that was in many ways very Eurocentric, and she also pointed out very gendered, and how she's taken that challenge and now it's become kind of in a way an opportunity where for her own students, for the next generation, she really strives to push the boundaries of theory, of sociology, beyond the normal kind of Eurocentric traditions that we often have. Yeah. So.
No, indeed. I mean, I'll tell you something, for instance. I mean, amidst the debates as they were raging in the past few years within the sociology, is that the issue of, for instance, I remember one of my prominent colleagues, Olujima Adeshina, is one of the former presidents of South African Sociological Association, and now actively involved in CODESIA and also, of course, also with African Sociological Association. He presented a very powerful paper which actually was apparently part of his lecture at his former university, which is titled Doing Sociology with Epistemic Intent. I think that was powerful. That is powerful. And of course, more other works. And I realize this is an international challenge, especially for the South-South world, the greater South-South. That how do we come up with counter-hegemonic theories, which actually challenge the existing hegemonic Western discourses. So it is indeed a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that we are up to. I think we will be able to engage with. Yeah,
and
I'm optimistic about it.
Our time has just flown by, Dr. Mapadimeng, but we have a couple minutes, and I'd like to ask you one final question. As you said, you came to a point in your life where you realized that you were meant to be a sociologist, but you also said there was a period. You also said there was a period that you wanted to be a medical doctor, correct? So now that you look back, if you hadn't become a sociologist, do you think that you would have wanted to be a medical doctor, or is there something else that you could have seen yourself doing?
Okay, I'll tell you something shortly before I do that. It's something about sociology as a discipline. What I think is something what could refer to as sociological consciousness. It's a commonly shared trait amongst sociologists, whereby we have concern, we share a common concern about the deprivations around us. Like, for instance, in South Africa and indeed other developing world, poverty is actually, we are surrounded by a sea of poverty, deprivations, socio-economic and environmental injustices. So this is one of the areas that actually I think we share, that there is a greater level of sharing that common consciousness among sociologists, which also makes me love the sociology. Now, with regard to what would I have become had I not become a sociologist, or maybe not even had I not reached the university. As I said, for varsity, I thought I was planning to study medicine. But had I not gone to university, and maybe not to a higher education level, I had a love for carpentry.
You had a love for, I'm sorry?
I had a love for carpentry.
Oh, carpentry. Yes, carpentry, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a love for carpentry because my uncle is one of the best carpenters around, and his work always inspired me. I also, of course, when I was young, I also used to play around with electrical gadgets. For instance, this is what they call electric circuit board, and connecting bulbs and all that. So I could also have become a light current electrician. So these are all some of the things I could have actually followed had I not become a sociologist or an academic or a medical doctor or whatever, or a lawyer.
Right, yes.
So I would have actually done more of a handwork, I would have really enjoyed it because my uncle actually showed, I could see from my uncle's trade that he's very much good in it. and there was a great potential to make a good living out of it, but also enjoy what you do.
So seems like, you know, this interest in building things, we're quite lucky that you took that into sociology and this sense of kind of really trying to build a better world, a different world. So
yes, that's our wish as sociologists, and we will continue to fight for that one way or another in our different spaces, but also, of course, where we get this opportunity collectively, we'll also continue to strive for human good. And of course, I mean, for socio-economic, political justice. And of course, there was a lot of challenges that are facing us. And I'm sure you are aware, for instance, the whole furore about Dalai Lama not being able to come to Archbishop Desmond Tutu's birthday, 80th birthday, and deliver a lecture because of the politics between Tibet and China and South Africa. And all this, I mean, the craziness that's going around. There are protests in South Africa at the moment. There are many other challenges. I mean, for instance, there are so many other challenges that are facing us. And these are the challenges facing sociologists. And within the arts and culture sector, I really also have challenges. I want to actually continue to fight for the marginalized, and especially young black research community. I want to see the massification of black researchers and black intellectuals in the arts sector who will be driving things and no longer being dependent. Thank you.
Yeah, I cannot imagine a better way to end the interview than on that. So thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Mapadimeng. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thanks, Lale. You are an amazing interviewer, and keep on doing a great job for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. So this has been another Journey Through Sociology with Dr. Simon Mapadimeng. Please join us next time when our guest will be Dr. Margaret Abraham from New York.